Welcome to Powerless to Powerful with Angela Bennett, a show that brings a sassy mix of transformative advice on health, relationships, love, career, and mindset shifting, together with some fun and laughter. Powerless to Powerful with Angela Bennett begins now. Welcome to Powerless to Powerful podcast and show with Dr. Cynthia Milton. Mike, I'm so excited to have her on the show today as my guest. Dr. Cynthia Milton has had a lifelong love for the arts in communication and business. She is the owner of Maximum Solutions Communications, providing marketing, public relations, and brand servicing for clients. She's also the CEO of Milton Properties Real Estate Investment Company. Woohoo! An award-winning journalist, a powerful voice in the state of Mississippi. She's a news producer, a local host of Morning Edition for National Public Radio affiliate at Jackson University, the host and producer of the Candid Conversations talk show. We are in for a treat today. Which won a first place award from the prestigious Mississippi Association of Broadcasters. She has been cited for awards by the Louisiana and Mississippi Associated Press organizations. In addition, Dr. Milton is a #1 best-selling Amazon author. Woohoo!
Along with you.
Along with me. I've also appointed to serve as an ambassador for the city of Jackson, Mississippi by the Chamber of Commerce, and she has lent her vocal ability and acting skills to several independent film projects. Dr. Milton is currently in the process of recording her very first single. How exciting! She is a motivational speaker who loves to encourage everyone to share their gifts and go for their dreams, no matter what their age or circumstance. And her life motto is, life is not about you. It's about what God can do through you and what you can do for others. Amen. Welcome to the show, Dr. Cynthia. What an honor to have you here. I'm so excited.
Oh, I have chills. The honor is mine. I bring you warm greetings from the warm Magnolia State of Mississippi. And just one thing is, Jackson State University. All my Tiger fans will really get me if I don't make sure that name is out there right. So it's I love Jackson State University, where we have WJSU.
Okay, sorry, I think I skipped that because I didn't know that was so important. I do apologize. Thank you for your correction. Wow. So we actually had the honor of not only being in a book together, Your Faith Will Make You Unstoppable, but also graduating together in Vegas in December of 2022.
Incredible experience, yes.
Incredible experience. So I am going to hand you the mic, and why don't you tell us a little bit, or as much as you like, about your story. We want to know about your book and your chapter, because I assume that's about your story, and also the trials and the tribulations that you've experienced, and we'll just get into a conversation along the way.
Okay. So just a little bit about me. I grew up, and I think it's a quaint town of Vicksburg, Mississippi. It's a river community. We're on the river, and which may be part of the reason I love water. As a young teen, I would go to the banks of the river and watch the sun set. As a matter of fact, and I love to watch even the sun rise, even though the sun doesn't rise over the river. But it was a sense of community. It was a great place to grow up. My mother and father were just salt of the earth people. They were hardworking people. My mother was a nurse, and my father was a factory worker when we were growing up. But my mother got ill. She had lupus and ended up in a wheelchair being disabled when I was about 13 years old. And I was the oldest of 2 daughters. So at a very early age, she began to teach me about responsibility and, teaching me how to pay the bills and things of this nature. And, kind of a typical teen. I went to the Vicksburg High School. I was a Gator girl. I was a cheerleader.
Wow.
Went off to college to Jackson State. And as I was getting ready to try to decide what I wanted to do with my life, I was at a friend's house and they mentioned this word, mass communications. Now people say more multimedia studies, and I said, well, what is that? And they said, well, it's like radio and television and these things. So I always loved words. I always loved to write. I wrote my first story when I was 6 years old, and my mother looked at me and said, you wrote that? And I said, yeah, I wrote that. So I always had a passion for words and poetry and songs and songwriting. And so when they said mass communications, I was like, I'm in. And started in radio and eventually got an opportunity in television.
I mean, like, sorry, okay, you go.
No. And eventually got an opportunity to do public relations. I became the communications director for the city's first African-American mayor. And that was quite the experience. And then he lost.
Wow.
And then I found myself out of a job. And that led to a very different kind of experience in my life.
So you were in radio and journalism, and then you were working for this gentleman. So what did that look like what happened when you so you lost your job? So where were you living by yourself? Were you still at home? What does this look like?
I was living by myself.
Were you in your car?
I would tell you, it was Mayor Harvey Johnson Jr., and he was amazing, a brilliant man, and was really concerned about moving the city of Jackson forward. Jackson now is having a lot of issues with its infrastructure. There have been stories around the world where the city has lost water, the whole city, a number of times. And that was something he was very passionate about. People would say, everywhere you go in the city is tore up. Infrastructure isn't sexy, but it's so needed. Yeah. And so as I look now, many years later, at the issues we were having, those were things he was trying to get the foundation set for back then. But as I said, he ran against actually a former boss of mine who was a very popular television executive, probably one of the few people who could have taken him out. And so I found myself, and actually the mayor was very pleased with my work. He called me in his office. He said, you've done a yeoman's job, and, look to have me go to another area of the city. I was going to oversee the city's television station and begin to develop programming for that. And so, the new administration wasn't having it. They kind of came with this, as they said, looking for all of the old appointees. And so I kind of found myself out of a job and didn't like it at all. And, didn't really, I think, see myself, the skill sets I had, and even how the community saw me. I think I had a reputation for being a fair journalist. I always tried to treat people with respect and be very balanced. But my aunt told me one time, you don't really see yourself. So I know now there are many, many things I could have done, but I don't think I saw it at that time, or maybe just the whole trauma of all of a sudden, not having a job. So for a while, my funds were very limited. Back then in journalism, we didn't make a lot of money, in local markets, and going with city government and being in the administration, I was finally making a little bit of money. And so, I hadn't had the benefit to save a lot, because most journalists, when they're young, they're just kind of making it in smaller markets. When you get to the bigger markets, it's a different story. But most of the time in the smaller markets, it's not that story, at least back then, And so the first thing that came along was like the UPS story. So I went from, planning city events and being over news conferences and developing statements for the mayor and just all of these amazing things. So packing those boxes. And it was seasonal work. So when the Christmas season ended, I was out of a job again.
So sorry, for Australian listeners, I don't know what a UPS store is.
Oh, United Parcel Service. Those people that shovel those brown boxes all around the world. So you can go to a UPS store in the United States, and you can take your box there, and they'll weigh it and they'll pack it up and all of that. They'll do. So that's where I was working. So I went from the mayor's office to that. Right. And after the Christmas rush ended, I was out of a job again because they didn't need the extra help. And even though I was college educated, even though I had all of this experience, and again, I think a part of me just didn't see myself as I was then. So
It's quite a blow. It's quite a blow to your self-esteem, to lose what can be quite a blow to your self-esteem, to lose a job, especially when you've been in such prominent roles and quite successful by the sounds of things. So that must have been quite challenging for you.
The thing about me is no matter what kind of recognition I ever got, I've always been a humble person.
Mm.
I never felt like the things around me dictated who I was.
Yeah.
The things that were important to me were character and integrity.
Yes.
And the way you treat people and your faith. And so you have those things, whether you have $1 million in the bank or you have 5.
Yeah.
And so I understood that that my character was still my character. So I didn't all of a sudden feel like, oh my gosh, I'm a nobody, because that job didn't make me somebody. It just gave me affluence, and I know I could get another job eventually. But I don't think I was as assertive about it because I didn't understand how much. I didn't really see myself. But no, I wasn't kind of like, I still knew I was God's girl. I still knew my Father had me. That season literally showed me how to lean on God as my Father. And that was pretty easy. I learned that season about God, the husband, because it's the husband that gets the hedges, cut. It's the husband that gets the car fixed. And so there were times when I would just go, okay, Father, okay, I said, okay, my hedges need to be clipped. I don't have the money to hire a landscaper. That's a husband thing. And I would go to God and said, okay, well, I need this done. And you will find this hard to believe. One day I came out and I looked at my hedges, my little garden bed, and I said, okay, God, I need somebody to come and do this for about $5. I left. I know it sounds crazy. I left. I went down the street and there was a guy doing landscaping work. And I said, hey, I have some weeds around my garden space. Can you come and look at it? And he said, yeah. And so I came back from the store and he came and I said, how much will you charge me for that? He said, oh, just give me $5.
Girl, I totally believe it, because that's our God, right? Like that's
or
just how
or my car would stop and I go, okay, this is a husband thing. My car, I'm on a main road, and then this car pulls up beside me. The guy gets out. He's a mechanic.
Of course he is.
I'm that for that season. Now that wasn't my whole life, and I probably couldn't do that now. But for that particular season in my life, God just supplied even the littlest, needs. Or I need something, I go to the store, and the very thing I needed, was on sale until I got to my next season. And so I heard the sermon.
Don't you just love how he loves us and cares about those the finer
that's why
details.
my self-esteem wasn't in the toilet. I'm still the apple of his eye. I'm just in a season. I have to get through this season. And he just cared for me so sweetly that season. I had to believe God. I mean, I remember one time I wanted to go to church the next day and my car wasn't working. I didn't have money to get it fixed. And I was like, well, I need a ride. And I don't remember the circumstances, but God arranged circumstances so I had a ride to church that next day. And he sent someone. I mean, I would during that season, I mean, mechanics would come out the woodwork and they would just come and fix my car for a little of nothing. These kind of shade tree mechanics. Thank goodness I had a car that could be fixed at that time by a shade tree mechanic. And it got me through that season. But then I needed to get to another season. And so I began to recall a sermon I had heard on the power of your words. And to some people, this may seem a little bit strange, but the Bible talks about the power of life and death being in your tongue.
Yes.
And I had heard this pastor say, well, how long do you how long do you confess for something? He said, till it comes. So I had this tape of confessions that I would listen to on and off. And I just made a decision. I'm just going to say these confessions and I'm just going to say them for the rest of my life. And if it shows up, it shows up. If it doesn't, but I'm just going to be consistent.
Yeah.
And within 4 months, I had, within a couple of weeks, I had a new job. In the interview, I got a raise and a promotion.
Wait,
And
wait. You went for the interview and they were
mm-hmm.
paying a certain amount, and in that interview, you received a raise.
From a person who had a reputation for not giving raises.
And you hadn't even started work there. You were
I
just
got a raise and I got a promotion in the interview.
Oh
And
my
and about
gosh.
4 months later, I got a new car, brand new car.
Oh,
And about 9 months later, I got a new job with the federal service, which changed my life. I had to go to Kansas to get the job. I didn't want to go to Kansas. The job was paying well, and I had a nice little condo close to the reservoir, which I like because I love water. It was just big enough for me. It was a beautiful area. And I had family and friends and contacts in Mississippi. I was very comfortable. I liked my church. I liked my friends. I liked where I lived. I didn't want to go to Kansas. And so a series of things happened. Someone told me about the job, and I just said, my sister, I think, told me about it. And I was like, yeah. And so she said, well, I had done contract work. I had done some contract work for the government. And she said, well, they really liked you. And, you should, this is open. You should apply. And I was like, yeah. And so then my best friend told me about the job. And so I had applied for a number of things with the federal service, not understanding how it worked. And now after working, because I ended up working in human resources, I realized I was just doing some things wrong. And so I said, well, I've applied for a number of things and I haven't even gotten an interview. And she said, why don't you just try one more time? I know someone who was a contractor in a position. She tried 27 times before she got the job. Just try one more time. I'll never forget that. And so of course, I wasn't in faith, but I said, okay, I'll try one more time. This is why you want to be careful who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
This is why you need people of wisdom and of faith to surround you.
Yes.
And I did it. And I'll tell you a quick story if we have time. On a Sunday before Labor Day, I was kind of driving home and I kind of just heard this little still voice was like, take this turn, take that turn. And that's something God did with me years earlier when he was teaching me to hear his voice. I'd be going somewhere and I just hear this, not audibly, but I just have this little knowing, this little unction, like turn this way, turn that way. And I would then go somewhere I didn't know where I was going, but I would still end up eventually where I was planning to go. I just didn't know you could go that way. And so that was his way of kind of teaching me to hear his voice. But that hadn't happened in years. And so I started doing that. And I found this shortcut home from church that I had no idea that. I said, oh my goodness, I'm right over here by my house. And then I heard this little voice say, Cynthia, I can show you the shortcuts in life. And so I went home and I closed the door because I knew he was kind of telling me this Kansas thing is for you.
Wow.
And I closed the door and I stood and I said, Father, I would much prefer to have this kind of opportunity in Mississippi. But nonetheless, not my will, but your will be done. Mm-hmm. And I went upstairs and went to sleep. I awoke to the Department of Army calling me on a Sunday before a holiday, Labor Day, that offered me that job. The federal government does not work on the weekend, typically. Oh. They do not work before a holiday. So I said, okay, that alone, I know that's God, because that just doesn't happen. And Kansas became an oasis for me. It was like a waterfall. I had an amazing church. There's a whole testimony about that. The church was literally around the corner from where I lived. We got in the car and we put the GPS on and it said, turn left. Turn left. You have reached your destination. I could throw a stone. We had so many miraculous things happen. I made friends who I'm friends with to this day. I said, there's my life before Kansas and it's after Kansas. I had a nice career in the federal service until God opened the door for me to go back to communications a couple of years ago. So for anyone who's going through that season where it just seems like, wow, how is my life ever going to get back on track? Or you're in some situation where you never planned to be through really no fault of your own, I would just say, keep heart. God can change it. I had about a 3-week period where I basically lived on ramen noodles and onions Now, mind you, I had a father I could have gone to. I had friends, probably I could have told relatives, but I didn't because our parents raised us to be independent. But
Mm.
I told my father, and was I uncomfortable for a little while? Yes, but eventually he came through, and things, needless to say, much much different now.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing that with us. It is so important just to keep our faith and keep pressing in, because it is in those moments, not that you had a breakdown, but things in your life were breaking down a little bit, and it's in those moments where we really press into him and draw close to him that he presses into us, he draws closer to us. He's so faithful, and he always gives us a breakthrough, always. His promises are yes and amen. And I just love stories like this, and it's paramount for me to share stories like this, because I know that there are people listening who are having, despondent moments or seasons, or feeling hopelessness, or maybe losing maybe the fire's going out in their passion to keep going because they've been trying for so long. But you've just got to hang in there, keep believing, keep praying, keep thanking God. Whatever you've prayed for, thank God for it and see it done, and just continually be thankful for what he's bringing to fruition. And it's not always the way we want it to be. It's usually better, like so much better. And yeah, so thank you for sharing that story. And would you just share a little bit about your chapter in the book, Your Faith Will Make You Unstoppable? What's the title of your chapter, and what a little bit about that, and how people can, like, what are you doing? So you have a single coming out as well. So I want to talk about that a bit as well.
Sure. Um, well, we'll talk about the single. So the single is called "I'll See You in the By and By,"
I'll see
and
you in the by and by.
"I'll See You in the By and By" is a song that I wrote
Okay.
many years ago. My grandfather was beginning to go to the place where land where he was born, and he would stand at the gate and he would say, "I want to go home." And then he got sick and he went to the hospital. My grandfather was stoic, you know. He was
Mhm.
flat stomach, 32-inch waistline, but those high Indian cheekbones, stoic, strong guy, quite strong, silent, quintessential strong, silent type. And so one night I went to the hospital and I heard this booming, yelling voice. It was my grandfather, and my father and his siblings were around trying to calm him down. And so I kind of went through. I said, "Granddad, what's going on?" And he said, "These children getting on my nerves." And so I told them that I wanted to stay, with my grandfather. His condition took a turn for the worse. I wanted to pray for him because I felt like if I prayed for him, he would come through.
Mm.
And so that night I went by his bedside and I put my hands to pray for him. And he looked at me. He couldn't speak, but his eyes just said, "Let me go."
Yeah.
I could tell that's what he was saying to me, "Let me go." And so I looked at him, and in my heart, I released him. I got up the next morning. I went to work, and about around midday, I got a call while I was at WLBT that he had transitioned. And so I told my boss, and I got in my white Buick Century, and I began to make the drive home. And as I drove home, my heart began to get heavier and heavier. And I said, "God, I know that my grandfather is in a better place." I said, "But this hurts." And you said the Holy Spirit is a comforter, and I need comfort.
Mm.
And this song began to come to me. And I got home and I finished writing it out. I had pretty much the whole song written in 20 minutes. And I
Wow.
told our minister of music, and he put it to music. And I began to play it in my car. And so the funeral was that weekend. By the time the funeral came, most of my grief was gone. And you have to know me and know how I love my family to know what a miracle that is. As a matter of fact, my family asked me if I would sing for the funeral. And I said, "Well, I have something I've written. Do you mind if I sing that song?" And so they said, "Yeah." And so the song starts out, "Tell all my daughters I love them. My songs carry on to be strong. My wife, she was always the queen of my heart and my home. But the time has come for me to cross over. I don't want you to cry for me because I'm in a better place. And it goes on and it talks about where he is. So anyway, I started singing, tell all my daughters I love them, my sons. And my aunts began to boo-hoo. And I stopped and I said, no, I'm not gonna, upset my family. They were like, no, we want to hear it. And I said, you want it? They said, yeah, go back and finish it. So as I played that song, I realized my grief just went away. I healed just faster and it stayed that way. So about a year later, my grandmother passed. And I began to play this song. And they asked me to sing it for her funeral. And the same thing happened. As dear as she was to me, within a week, I was healed enough to be able to sing it at her funeral and, be okay. And so when my father passed, I didn't sing that song at his funeral. And I had a really hard time because my father was just kind of my world. I just loved him so dearly. He was just so amazing. And, I kind of, I buried my dad and I started a new, we call it in the Army, we call it a detail. I started a detail assignment in public affairs because I was in human resources, but I always wanted to be in public affairs. So it was good. It was exciting, and it kind of helped take some of the grief. And I was, now a business owner running this business, so it kind of delayed my grief a little bit. But at the end of the year, at the 6 months when that was up, I took a leave of absence, and then the grief began to come in, and it was very difficult. And I remembered about 4 months in, I remembered that song. Wow. So I started to play it again. So I feel like the song, I know for me at least, helped heal my grief. It helped speed up my grief. And so many people right now are dealing with grief and loss, with COVID and just all the things that are going on. And so my hope is that this song will do for others what it did for me, that it will help us remember the people that we love, appreciate the time that we have for them, take the lessons, heal, and then move on and say what have us to do. So that's the song. And in fact, I talked to the producer on the way to get ready for this interview. And the music, the final cut of the music is coming this week. We hope to get the vocals laid down next week. And so hopefully by next month, we'll have that completed. If not by next month, by March. So that's that. Wow. And so as for the chapter of the book, the book is, sustaining your faith, standing on your faith. Because we can talk about our faith and standing on it and not being moved by what we see, but that is not easy.
No.
It is not the norm, It is not what the world tells you to do.
That's right.
And to someone who doesn't understand faith and how it works, it can actually look kind of crazy. It can look nonsensical. And so you may have people around you saying, well, that doesn't make any sense, or, what are you doing? So it talks about, standing on our faith. I have a dear friend. Her name is Selena Drumgold. She is an amazing minister and pastor. And she did this sermon and she made this quote, and it resonates with me so dearly. She said, "Is your job? It's kind of like your job is not to figure it out. Pray and leave the details to God. That's it. Pray and leave the details to God." And so, I'm so sorry. We kind of got a shadow. I didn't realize we got in the shadow. The sun's setting, so I'm going to try to.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So she says, pray and leave the details to God.
I love
that. It's not our job to figure out, exactly how it's going to come to pass. It's our job to believe according to his word, to say his word, to pray, to spend time, and to listen to the instruction and follow. So in my book, I talk about how, I was at this woman's house and there was an actress there. And so, the host introduced me to the young lady. Her name is Cynthia. We call her Sam. And so my friend Colleen introduced me to Cynthia. She said, she's an actress. And I said, well, when I was young, I wanted to do all of, those kinds of things. And Cynthia looked at me and she said, well, you still can. So my natural inclination was to say, oh, no, they don't, I'm in Mississippi and I'm over 40. But something inside of me just said, don't let that come out of your mouth.
Mm.
So I paused for a moment and I said, you're right. You're right. I could. And so fast forward a few weeks later, someone invited me to the screening of this movie. The
Uh-huh.
movie was called Soul Damage. And so there was a part of the main character had been had experienced trauma and molestation, and it was affecting the way he related to women. And then there was a scene where he got a breakthrough, and there was a woman that played the part that helped him get this breakthrough. And when I saw that part, I just got, I guess, what people call a burden for the part. And I said, oh my goodness. I said, there's so many people who need this breakthrough,
Yeah.
but this can't be acting. There has to be an anointing so
Yeah.
that, because this can reach people who will never go to a church or who never will hear a preacher. And so I got like a burden for this part. And so he had the director had invited some close friends and different people, and one of those people had invited me. And so he asked for feedback, and they ripped up the person who played this part for a number of reasons. It wasn't all, because of her acting, but for a number of reasons. And so he said, he said, believe it or not, she was like the best who showed up that day. So after it was over, I had forgotten I'd done this. I went up to him and I introduced myself, and I said, I think I can play that part. And he said, oh, really? And I said, yeah. So fast forward, I got to meet him, and we became friends. And he had an open casting call one day.
Uh-huh.
And I went and I read the part. The character's name was Julia. I was so nervous. I wanted to run out. It was in a little cafe in Madison County, Mississippi. I was sitting there wringing my hands, and I just wanted to get up and run out. And one of my former church members walked in. And I said, Gina, come sit by me. And when she came, it just calmed me so. And so I went in and I read for the part. And so he told me, he said, well, you have potential. He said, you have potential. And he went on he hadn't reshot the movie, but he went on to do the play. And I was his friend now. And he cast somebody else. He didn't cast me. And so he was apparently very pleased with this person. And so one day I was sitting at home and I was just thinking about that part. It wouldn't go away.
Mm.
And I just sat there and I just said, I don't know how, but someday, some way, I'm going to play that part.
Mm.
And I got up and I went to go make my bed. 2 hours later, the phone rang. It was him. And he said, Cynthia, I'm calling to offer you the part of Julia. I felt like I was Julia Roberts. I felt like, I said, give me the part I've been wanting to play for over a year. He said, yes. And I don't get super excited about it, but I was like, oh my goodness. So I got to play the part. And,
wow.
And then, but I thought and let me tell you something that happened. The man that played my husband, the character that my husband in the movie is based on, I had gotten invited to a meeting 3 days before I was to shoot this role. The person conducting the meeting was the man my husband in the movie was based on, the actual person.
Oh, what?
So I'm back at home 3 days later. I'm back at home the next day after this meeting. The meeting was on my birthday. And so my friend was like, will you come and go to this meeting with me? And I said, did you just ask me to go to a meeting with you on my birthday? She said, yes, I did. Come on and go. And so I loved my friend. So I went. And they were so sweet. They heard that I was coming to this meeting on my birthday. They had cupcakes and all this. And so a couple of days later, I'm sitting in my living room and I'm reading because I have the script and I have the book. And so I'm reading the book, and the book says, I'm going to say the person's name was Kawhi. Kawhi walked over and, kissed Julia on the hand. And then so I get a text message. Oh, hello, dear Cynthia. Thank you so much for, coming, to our meeting and being a part of this project. No, actually, the phone went off and I didn't look at it because I didn't want to be distracted. Mm. And so I'm reading and then the phone goes off. And so I go get my phone and then it goes off a third time. And so I go, and it's just him, thanking me for coming and being a part of the project, and whatnot. And so, and he's like, and this is Kawhi. And so I go, and then I go back, Kawhi said so and so, this is Kawhi. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is the person this person is based on.
Oh
I
my.
was like, statistically, what are the chances that I'm getting text messages from the character, in this movie? It was incredible. Anyway, we went on and we did it, and I got on the set and I thought, oh, I know this. I saw it in the movie. And the director flipped. The actors took their acting up to another level. These guys were professionals.
Wow.
One of them played a character on OWN, one of the shows on OWN, and he just went to another level. When we finished the scene, my chest was wet with his tears.
Oh.
And he thanked me. He said, you carried me in this. Thank you for the way you carried me. His wife told me when we went to the premiere, she said, I think, something powerful happened. I know my husband, but I think something powerful happened. People came to me and said, well, I want a hug from Julia. The next day, I got up that morning and I took a deep breath, and it was like, and I realized I had been carrying this role in my heart and holding it since I seen that movie for the first time the year before, because I just, something in my heart just said, for the people who are going through this, for the people who need deliverance from this, Julia has to be just right. Yeah. Julia has to be, and not that I'm the perfect actress, but I believe I had the anointing that God could work through me to reach the people who saw that movie. So it was an incredible experience. But I wondered what would have happened when Sam said, as a matter of fact, Sam and I are now castmates, because Sam was in the movie. She was, in the original cast. What would have happened if, when Sam said, you still can be in movies, I had said, no.
Right.
Because we have what we say.
We have what we say.
But I just said, no, someday, some way, I will play that part. I just prayed and I left the details to God. And boy, he did a better job than I ever could have done myself.
There's, excuse me, the words that you said, you carried him through that. Say a similar phrase came up yesterday when I was doing a previous podcast interview. And then there's a song that I know it's called I Was Carried. And for some reason, there's this theme coming along of the way God carries us through life, through our situations. And I'm just a bit overcome at the moment, which is beautiful, and I love it. So I won't apologize. But
okay. I just got a chill. It's okay.
Yeah. Well, while you were talking about all of this, I was covered in goosebumps. And I just love how whatever it is that we're going through in life and in our situations, He's always there. He's always sheltering us and carrying us and watching over us. And He knows the plans that He has for us, the plans for hope and for a future. And so when we're eating our noodles and our onions or our baked beans we have in Australia, He sees us. He sees us and He gives us these desires in our heart that like the desire that you had to play this role that you carried for the 12 months before you had the opportunity. And if He didn't, He wouldn't give us a hunger for something if He wasn't going to feed us with the promises that He fulfills and the plans that He has for us. And wow. Thank you for sharing that story and bringing that theme of being carried. I know you didn't even know about it, but I just thank you for the words that you've used and the stories that you've told. And thank you for saying yes to your dream, your vision, your heart. Because if you didn't, we wouldn't have shared this story. And that, like, what a cool scenario that happened, being in the meeting of the actual guy.
It's incredible. I always say statistically, what are the chances?
Oh, pretty much impossible, I reckon.
What are the chances I'm doing a film in Mississippi? What are the chances, that I just get invited to this random meeting on my birthday, and 3 days later I'm shooting a scene based on a character that's based on him. That's the kind of God we serve. He is not limited to our imagination. He is not limited to situations or circumstances. He is not limited to anything. He creates things. And so what I've learned at this season in my life, I wanted to do all these things when I was young. I was singing and I was in a band and I was, the co-captain of the Jackson State University Dance Ensemble. I had all these gifts and talents that I wanted to do, but never kind of quite figured out, and God just opened. I didn't go find the producer. The producer was at an event and I was getting ready to go. And I said, "Are you going back to Atlanta tonight?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Be safe on the road." And he said, "Thank you." And then he said, "Hey, call me." And then he calls me. He says, "Do you need a producer?" Stellar award-winning producer, internet radio owner, producer, just there. God can do things so much sweeter and better than we can. We just need to please our Father. We just need to hear what he says and just be obedient.
Yeah.
And pray and leave those details, those sweet details, to our Father.
Oh, man. That is just the most perfect note to end this show on. Dr. Cynthia, you are such a blessing to me, and I want to see that movie. I want to see that show. How do people get in touch with you if they want to work with you, or I don't know. I mean, we all want to buy your single when it comes out. I know that much.
Okay. Well, you can keep up with me. I am on Instagram. It's Cynthia Maxie Milton, and that's Maxie. And then I have a page on Facebook that's Cynthia Maxie Milton as well. So you can keep up with me on both those pages. My Facebook page, Cynthia Maxie Milton, is a baby. So if you guys would all go out there and like it and follow it, you would make me very, 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 very happy. And you can email me at CMaxiemilton @mail.com. So that's c.maxiemilton@ymail.com. I'll say it one more time. CMaxiemilton@ymail.com. Of course, you can messenger me on Facebook or Instagram, and you can call me at area code 601-454-4979, 601-454-4979. A text works a little bit better for me because I'm always moving, but I always try to return my text. I can't always answer the phone. But it has been my pleasure, my honor, and my unadulterated joy being here with you today. And I can't wait until you're a guest on Candid Conversations.
Oh, I accept. Dr. Cynthia, thank you so much. You are a joy. You brought so much joy to my heart, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Have an amazing day, and I will talk to you soon.
Sure. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Follow Angela on Facebook and LinkedIn at Angela Bennett, on Instagram at AngieB_transformations, or visit angieb.com.au. And remember, your past does not define you, it refines you.